Hey everyone, welcome to Wildlife Inspired. I'm your host, Scott Keys. Part 3 of 3 on gimbal heads. This time we look at gimbals over $600. And can anything take out the champ? Right after this. I've been doing gimbal reviews for the last couple months, and I started at the lowest price point that I was comfortable recommending, around $200. And now I'm working my way all the way up to $1,200 in this review. I'll be looking at 5 gimbals between $600 and $1,200. And the theme of this has been, can anything take out the Wimberly? This is the tried and true, the gold standard, the reference point for just about every wildlife photographer when it comes to gimbals. At $600, my challenge was, could I find something I liked as much or better for less? Or is there anything in this price point or even higher that just outcompetes it? So we're going to look today at 5 gimbals. You'll see me referencing over here. I've got some notes down here in the side. And I'll be giving you some of the specs just like I did with my other reviews. Now this again is part 3 of 3, so check out the 2 other reviews that I have. I'll put a card up at the top for you to check those out. Let's get into the first gimbal now. And the Wimberly, just some of the pros and cons here. I talked about this in my first video, or my second video, when I really featured this. The pros, just a ton of reviews. No mentions of failure. So not one review could I find where anybody mentioned something broke, their equipment was damaged, and it just is solid. It's smooth in both axes. There's really nothing wrong with it. Now I had some personal opinions on it. Personally, I don't love the utilitarian design. I'll call this a utilitarian design. It is also the design that many gimbals and competitors are based upon. So you can find these copycats all the way down to $99. But I cautioned in my other videos, be very careful in those price points. The only problems that were ever mentioned in terms of breakage when I asked people on my Instagram account, and I do get a lot of feedback on that account, were people that went with knockoffs, very cheap. And it was almost as if they said, I knew better, I shouldn't have done it, and now I lost a lens. So I think all of the price points that I covered here, including my first video, which started around $250, I think everything that I've recommended here felt pretty good. There wasn't anything that felt cheap, where they skimped on components, but there was a little bit of a difference, obviously, from manufacturer to manufacturer. So the gold standard here, was there anything I didn't love about the Wimberly? There was a couple things. I don't love the aesthetics. That's just me. It is completely superficial, has nothing to do with taking good images. I realize that. There was also just a little bit of play, and I mentioned it in the second video that I did when I featured this. A little bit of play right here. It is inherent in the design. Again, with this design, this friction knob basically is pulling this together to create tension, and eventually it just locks itself out. Now this being very smooth, and several of them were very smooth with this design, some of them did have a little bit of play right here. The Wimberly did have a little bit of play right there, and I featured that in the other video that I did. I've read reviews, nobody complains about this, but I do try to find something that I didn't like about it, and that was probably the only thing. Again, a very minor point. I don't think it should affect you from purchasing this by any way, but it was something I did want to point out, especially if you're in an environment that's very gritty with fine particles, where you could get salt and things like that, possibly even in that. But again, you're talking about a very small opening. So with this being the gold standard, I'm going to start by price point order, and we're going to work our way up to the most expensive, and let's see how they stack up. Before we get into the first gimbal, I do want to just talk about the setup here. I've got a 300mm 2.8 mounted to a D500 crop body with no battery grip. So it balances nicely on here. You could see it, it's kind of an average size lens combination. So I didn't want to put a giant lens on here. Plus I have it set up doing another project out in the yard. So this is what we're going to work with today. I do want to also just share my setup. So the gimbal I'm using currently and have been using for a long time is a Promedia gear, none of this sponsored, mounted to a ball head. This is the Robus ball head. I can put a description of both of these products in here, just if you're curious, why do I like this setup? Well, first of all, it is heavier and it's more expensive than the Wimberly. So this setup here cost about $700. You can get a similar setup for about $500 to $600, but I do like the versatility in that I can take this side mount off of the ball head and have 2 different units. I can put the side mount on another setup if I want. So it's just a little bit more flexible, and I've been using that for years. I also made a note that at the end of this review, or all of these reviews, I may go out and buy a gimbal, but why buy it now if I'm going to get my hands on 15 gimbals and get to test and see which one I like the best? So that's what we're going to do. Let's start this one with the Promedia gear. So this is the Katana Junior. It's $649 retail. It does have a built-in bubble level. It does come with a mounting plate. The load is rated at 50 pounds and 2.4 pounds weight on the actual gimbal. That's a pretty good ratio of the gimbal weight to the load weight. It's 9.75 inches tall, has a B&H rating of 4.8 with 37 reviews, so a fair number of reviews. I also want to mention this is made in the USA, just like the Wimberly, and those are selling features, so I always like to try to, if the country of origin is of interest, I do try to put that out there. So both of these made in the USA, the Wimberly and the Promedia gears, 2 Promedia gears I'm actually going to review today. What do I like about this one? I like a lot about this one. So very, very smooth. You can see I don't have these perfectly balanced for my lens. I tried to get it pretty close before I put it on here, but really, really, really smooth. I love the way this is built. I love the design. I've been using the Promedia gear Tomahawk for a long time, so I'm comfortable with the company in terms of reliability. I've had no problems or issues with the Tomahawk, and the service and reliability on these from Promedia gear in general is very, very good. So I feel really good about the brand. I feel really good about the construction, the materials, the weight. There's really very few drawbacks, if any. But there's one major thing about this design, and it's very similar. I'll show you this Promedia gear where it's got the dial on the top. It's a different tension system. So with the Wimberly, we're bringing tension in. Remember that Wimberly design, any of those gimbals designed that way. As you tighten the threads, it's going to put friction right in here, and that's eventually going to lock out. Here it's done differently, and I'll show you again. I showed you in the other 2 videos, but I'll show you again real quickly with my Tomahawk, the Promedia gear, how that tension is controlled here and why you get such great control, because it's highly variable. So you can put a little tension or a lot of tension on there. So let's talk about that real quick. The greatest feature to me of this wasn't just how light it was and how smooth it was. It was the amount of friction that you could apply to it. So with most of the other gimbals, if you remember, we were able to lock them out with about a half a turn of the knob. Most of the Wimberly design, some a little quicker, some had a little bit more adjustment in there. With this style, you tend to get more adjustment. So both the bottom horizontal pan out, I'm going to unlock it first. So now I can move it, but there's a little bit of play on there. So I'm going to push it and you'll see it turns very smooth. Now, but I can adjust it some more. So I'm going to take it off a little bit more, about the same amount of push. And look how smooth that is. And if I take it all the way off, same amount of push, it just glides. I mean, it just glides. Now, that's because there's sealed bearings in there. And the clamp design that I showed you up here is very similar to the horizontal friction control. So it seems like really, really good. People are probably watching this thinking, wow, that's amazing. Look how smooth it is. It is incredibly smooth. And I also have the ability to very accurately and slowly dial in tension. So if I want a little tension or a little resistance, I can do that. Here's the problem. If I don't have any tension on it, so I'm right about here, and I want to lock it out, and let's say both positions, one turn, it's not quite locked out. So I'm like much more than a full turn. So it takes longer to lock them out. And some people want that big knob that locks out quickly. These are smaller knobs. I wish these knobs were a little bigger, to be honest. Same thing here. I've got no tension on here. I want to lock it out. So let's say I want to lock that. That's one full turn, nothing. Okay, and now we're getting there. So, a lot of tension control based off of the design, which I really, really like. It's super smooth. And I can adjust it. I can get a lot of fine adjustment, but you saw me have to do a couple turns to lock it down. So this is completely on you as a photographer. If you like that feature, if you want the friction, if you want the adjustment, if you like that fine tuning, this is an excellent choice. Probably my highest recommendation in all of the gimbals that I've reviewed. But if you don't like that, then simply this is not in the category for you to purchase. If you want to lock out quickly, you got to look at another gimbal. It's about as simple as that. So I highly recommend this one. I like it a lot, but if you don't like that lockout feature, you don't like that tension control setup, you are going to want to look at a different gimbal. I do want to make one more point on this one. Promedia gear makes another version of this. So it has the exact same base, but instead of the cradle or the swing arm here, they put an Arca plate on the side and it would be side mounted. Now I didn't bother to get that because it's identical to this, with the exception that it's built as a side mount. It does not have the cradle included. It is cheaper. I think it's about $75 cheaper. I'll put the price up here and I'll put a picture of what it looks like in here. But that is also an option. When I'm done my review, because again, I've been using these side mounts, I personally don't see a big disadvantage in a side mount. For one, it's always balanced. So when you put your lens in the side mount positions, it's always balanced. The only question I've ever had with this is if you use it a lot, if you use a side mount gimbal all the time with a giant heavy lens, because the lens collar is going to be at 90 degrees, does that put more torque on that collar? I don't think, I mean, I think at this level, with this construction, with these lenses, I don't think that would be an issue. But honestly, I have never had a problem with mine. I can't say that it's an issue, so there it is. I don't know. If somebody's had experience with that, please put it down in the comments. I think people would love to find that, that comment out there if somebody's had the experience with it. All right, spend a little bit of time on this one. There's going to be a couple that move a little bit quicker, but let's wrap this one up and get to the next one. And here we have the Fotopro E-9h. This is the big brother to the E6h, which I reviewed earlier. This one comes in a little bit more expensive at $725. It's also considerably larger than the 6h. This is rated to hold 66 pounds. It weighs 4.2 pounds. So this is a pretty heavy setup compared to relative to the other ones that we've looked at. It's 8.1 inches tall, so fairly compact, kind of in the middle. It's not one of the tallest, but not the shortest, but a lower profile. Very few reviews on this, very, very few reviews. Just a couple 5-star reviews, but not a lot at all out there. It does come with a very large bubble level at the bottom, and I'll talk a little bit about why that happens. And it also has a mounting plate included. Now I've put the 300 on here. This one is very, very interesting. I liked the 6 a lot. There was it had a lot of features, and the theme around the 6 was the cradle was too short to support a large lens, so the large lens would be top heavy. I didn't like that about it, but what I loved on both the 6 and the 9 is this plate here is an ARCA compatible plate. So with the 6, you could put it in the side mount position, and then you didn't have a problem with balance. You can do the same with the 9. Now my 300 rests pretty comfortably on here, but when I put my 400 on, and I would imagine the same with the 600, depending on the lens foot that you have, it may set up a little bit higher. So remember, ideally we want the center of gravity to be even with the fulcrum here, the pivot. If it gets higher, then it tends to want to flop. Even if it's balanced forward and backwards, if the center of gravity is up top, it will be fine when it's level, but as soon as you turn it, gravity is going to want to pull it in that direction. So just something to note on the 6 and the 9. But having the adaptability, and this is one of the very few manufacturers that has an ARCA plate here with the cradle that mounts into it. That allows you to use it as a cradle or a side mount. So very, very important. On the other video on the 6, I talked about these safety buttons, which I like. So when you lock and unlock, there's a little button here that you have to push before you can fully unlock it. I'll give you an example here. I'm going to unlock that, and I can't take this out. It's turned as far as it'll go. Let me find the button. There it is underneath. When I push the button in, now I can fully unlock it. And I'm not going to do that, but that's how you would unlock that or lock that. So it is a nice little safety feature, the only one that has that. Very similar to the 6 in that the biggest strength of both of these products is the versatility. These are really designed as hybrids, in my opinion, for landscape photographers and wildlife photographers. And there's also another feature that these have that make it very appealing to somebody doing video. Now the 6 is a much smaller travel capable lens, but this is a gimbal. This is a small enough size that you could easily travel with it. It is a little bit heavier, but not that big a deal for travel. All right, now let's talk about some of the features. All right, so I've got these big knobs up here. Are they smooth? Well, they are very smooth. In fact, there's a lot of resistance, but the resistance both ways, here and here, it feels like a fluid head. Now, if you've used a fluid head, you probably can remember what that feels like as you're turning it. There's always resistance. It's not hard resistance. It's not like friction resistance. It really is like fluid. Think of yourself kind of when you're swimming through water. It's fluid resistance, and that's very similar to what this feels like, even with no tension. So I'm going to take these knobs all the way off. Now, remember with the Katana, I was able to spin it around. Watch what happens when I try to spin this. It's not, I mean, if you're looking for something that's impressively smooth on this demonstration, this isn't it. There's a lot of resistance here. It's very, very smooth, but there's a lot of resistance. Same here. Now this one not nearly as bad because I'm able to kind of pan or tilt this very quickly. I wasn't too concerned about this. This one I thought would be a concern. I actually took this out in the field because most of the ones I just tested in my yard around here and I get a sense for what they are. With this one, I was concerned about this. So I actually took it to photograph birds in flight. I found the fastest flying birds in flight that I could find reliably, and those were purple martins. So these are like swallows, very quick. If you've ever watched swallows hunt or fly, they're just erratic and they're all over the place. And I thought that would be a great test for this. Honestly, I expected frustrated and I wasn't. In the office, in the yard, I anticipated this because it was so, and it's not sticky. It's just got a lot of resistance. I expected this to be trouble, and it really wasn't. It was much smoother to track birds in flight than I expected. It was not ideal or perfect for it. So again, getting back to this concept that this is a hybrid system that does a lot of things really well. The resistance you feel for those quick moving erratic birds in flight offers a lot of benefits when it comes to video. In fact, they include, like many fluid heads, they include a little arm with this. It's interesting. I emailed them a couple times about this and asked about the design. I couldn't take this apart to look at it, but I asked, is this a fluid head? And I never got a committed answer on that. So I can't tell you for sure. I can tell you 100% it feels like one. They did point out that it is designed that way. It is intentionally designed with resistance. So is it a true fluid head or is there other system in there? I can't tell you. A couple other features about this one that make it really good for landscape. I mentioned in the second video a nodal point, which is what landscape photographers use when they're stitching together panoramas. And to do that, you've got to be able to move the lens forward and back to get the correct point on this axis. So you may be able to do that, for example, with the plate here, but if you run out of room on the plate or you don't have the right lens, this offers you the ability to actually move, and I'll have to unlock this first, yep, and I'm just gonna tilt it. There we go, I'm unlocked. I just want to be careful because I got my lens on here. All right, I'm going to tilt it forward, and it gives you the ability to move that lens even further forward or backwards. Now, for wildlife, this may not be a huge thing, but it does also give you the ability, if you had this extreme angle you wanted to shoot down, you could move the lens into this position. And while I've never really had the need to do this, if you wanted to shoot almost straight up, you could do that. So again, a very, very versatile system. Maybe you're shooting stars. It could come in handy for stuff like that. It's got extreme flexibility. Here's another feature that no other gimbal that I've looked at had. This can unlock, and I want you to see me slide this left and right. There. So if I want to align the camera, because maybe I'm using a smaller lens in the side mount position, there's a lot of reasons you may need to do that. Probably not for wildlife, but again, this gimbal is not just designed for wildlife. If you exclusively shoot wildlife, specifically if you just shoot or primarily shoot birds in flight, I would say probably steer away from both of the Fotopros, because I think there are just other options out there, even a little bit cheaper. But if you're a landscape photographer, you do a little video, you do wildlife, I honestly think almost by far, this is the best combination gimbal that's made. You can look at the 6. The 6 is plenty sturdy enough to handle a wildlife lens, but you're probably going to end up using it in a side mount position, full disclosure. This one, with a bigger lens, you may be in a side mount position as well to get the balance you want. With a taller lens, you may have to play around with it. So I think I covered everything with this one. There's a lot to cover with this. I talked about the safety features. I talked about this fluid head feel to it, how it can tilt forward and backward to achieve a nodal point if you need it. Oh, by the way, that adjustment forward and backwards, it is not just set to 45 and 90 degrees, so you can lock this out at any position. So if I want to move this just a little bit forward, I can lock this out in any position, and it locks very firmly. So I just wanted to point that out. So I think that's really all I have for this one. A lot to talk about. The next two are going to go much faster, but the last one, the Katana Junior, and especially this one, just had a lot that I wanted to make sure that I shared with you guys, so that if you are making a purchasing decision, and look, we're talking about in one case, $1,200. So we want to make sure that we're informed, and I wanted to make sure you have the information on this one. So let's get on to the next one. Look at this monster. This is the Promedia Katana. This is their biggest gimbal. Comes in at $750. It does have the bubble level built in. It comes with a mounting plate. The load capacity is rated at 50 pounds. I will tell you, I think this is extremely conservative. It's got the same load rating as the Katana Junior. It is noticeably bigger, larger, heavier, taller. In fact, this is the heaviest gimbal that I've ever tested. This is 5.5 pounds. It is 13 inches tall. It's 4 inches taller than the tallest gimbals that we looked at. It's got a B&H rating of 4.5 with 10 reviews. I will tell you, this is a beast. In terms of build quality, my personal opinion, this was almost hands down the best build quality. It was very similar to my Tomahawk. In fact, if you look at the top of this, it is, I believe, the same component. So while there may be some differences inside, I'm not going to take it apart. I took that Tomahawk apart in a previous video, but I was very impressed with how it's designed in here. I want to show you the spin test, but before I do, notice that the knob here, let me see if I can get it squared up. It's not in the middle of the panning base. It's actually offset, and that's because here is where it tightens. So it actually tightens. I told you Promedia uses a clamp system on the side. This is the clamp that it's tightening around. I did that little spin test with the Junior. I think if I was selling these at a display, I would just sit here and spin them to impress people, because it is wondrously fluid and smooth. And again, the big advantage with their systems is you get a lot of tension control. The disadvantage is it doesn't lock out quite as quickly as the other. So you will see me kind of turning these knobs to loosen and tighten a little bit more than the others. One small thing I did not like about this, the knob placement here is a little awkward. I'm using my left hand, as I think most people do. They want to control left hand with tension if you're a right-handed shooter, so that your right hand is on the camera, left hand is here. Some people do it differently, but for me, this knob placement was a little off. I don't know where they could have done, or where they could have put it to done better, but didn't love it. The top knob's no problem. Again, just super, super smooth with a lot of control here. So what do I think about this one? I really like this. I think there's some things you can do with this. I'm going to show you one in just a second. There's some things you can do with this that you can't really do with any other gimbal. It is just a rock solid beast. The downside, it's big. This is not your travel lens. This is 13 inches tall. It's by far the tallest. It's almost twice as tall as some of the others. And it literally weighs more than twice than many gimbals. So this is not a travel gimbal. If you're throwing your tripod on your shoulder and you're hiking around the woods, or you're out, walking through prairies for miles a day, this is not the setup. But if you have short distance, that you're not taking this on long treks, and you're just setting it up and you want just a rock solid monster, this is the one. It's $750. It's got a great build quality. So I'm very, very impressed with this gimbal. Well, one of the other things I told you, there's some things that this will do that nothing else can do. For example, in Promedia's marketing, you're going to see a double mounted gimbal. You actually can mount two bodies on here. I've got a hack that I've done that with. I'm going to show you a picture of it real quick. I'm not going to go through it because I don't want to take up too much time in this video. I've got another gimbal hack video that I'm going to do in the future. I'll put it in there instead. But you can actually, I found a way to get two lenses without any adaptation. You can just do it strictly with this. You need one $30 to $100 piece of equipment, depending on how much you want to spend for that piece. But I found it to be very, very interesting. But yeah, I could actually get my 400 and a 300 millimeter on the same plate, the same cradle. So can't really do that with any other gimbal because they're just not big enough, tall enough, or strong enough. So pretty simple. It's a beast. If this is what you're looking for, if you want the sturdiest, strongest, most stable and fluid, but again, it's not going to lock out quickly, then this really would be an excellent choice. But it is tall and it is heavy. All right, I got one more to show you. This is a $1,200 gimbal we're about to look at. Let's see how it stacks up. I had seen the Zanelli online. Haven't really seen any photographers with it. At $1,200, this isn't the kind of thing that you just see a lot. But man, did it look great online. Carbon fiber build. It boasts the lightest gimbal, I think, made for wildlife. Full-size gimbal made for wildlife at 2 pounds. So very, very, very light. And on paper, it had some really neat features. So locks out here. So if you're putting your lens on and on or carrying it, it locks out here. They boast about this feature down here. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. What I didn't necessarily like, it's got a quick lock out here. So instead of the others which had dials, I think every gimbal I tested had a dial with the exception of this one. A lot of people do like this plate, this quick release plate, a little bit better. And then other than that, it's good. The same Wimberly form factor, just a little cleaner, a little sleeker, carbon fiber construction, much lighter. So I don't even put my lens on this one. And honestly, I'm not going to. And the reason I'm not going to is because I did not like this for $1,200. For $1,200, this thing had to be flawless. I showed you a couple tests with the Promedia gear. I'm going to loosen this knob here. And first of all, the knobs, while I think are designed to cut weight, this bottom knob feels really cheap to me. I'm just telling you, it feels cheap. The top knob appears to be made of aluminum, and I actually rather liked this top knob, the design. And again, it's hollowed out to be light. I liked that one. This little piece here felt plastic, and while it locked it out, again, it felt a little cheap. It worked effectively, but didn't, for $1,200, I think I expected a little bit more. When I loosen this, and I'm going to show you the lockout, I'm going to pull it back towards me to lock it out, and it locks out pretty good. And then I push it forward to loosen it. But as I push it forward, I want you to notice, I don't know if you can see it here, the plastic actually rubs the carbon fiber. Not sure if I was designing a $1,200 gimbal, I would do that. Clearly, this is not sponsored. And one of the great things, I put it up earlier, but B&H gives me the opportunity to do these unadulterated. I have no commitment to any company, and all I have to do is do the review. They don't put any pressure on me to give a positive review. They just say, here's the gear, do your thing. And because of that, when I do endorse a product, or I do say I like a product, I want you guys to believe it, that it really is unendorsed. Anything that's given to me or sponsored in any way, I do try to put it out there. So every now and then a company will send me merchandise. For example, this Robust tripod was given to me. And for that reason, I don't review it, but I put it out in the video and I let you know that I'm using it. And I do like the Robust products. I have a Robust ball head that I use. So anytime something's given to me, I try to put it out there. But again, the nice thing is, if I don't like this product, it doesn't matter that it's $1,200. I could say I don't like it. And this one I wouldn't recommend. If you own it, I'm not bashing you. It works and it's good. But for $1,200, I expected something to be twice as good as the $600 Wimberly. And if given the choice between the Wimberly at $600, and yes, it's a pound more, so it is heavier, but given the choice between the Wimberly at $600 and the Zanelli, if it was $600, I'm still not sure I would take it. It looks great. It looks like a Ferrari. I do want to loosen this up and show you something. Remember when I did those Promedia gears, I showed you how smooth they were? Okay, come on. Watch it locked in the same place every time. So there's a sticking point right here. Now, could this be the model? Could this be a copy that I got that's a little tight in one area? Absolutely. For $1,200, I would expect every copy going out the door to be perfect. And this one just didn't feel, it didn't feel quite as good as the Wimberly. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because I'm just outright going to say, if you have one, it's fine. I just think for me, for the money, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to put $1,200 here. I'm going to get a Wimberly, a Katana Junior, maybe a Leo Photo because I like the friction control on that system better. I'm probably going to end up with one of those and then put $600 back into tripod legs or a new lens or something like that. So anyway, I'm going to take this one off. I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to put my favorite back on here, and then I'll tell you my closing thoughts on this. I don't know if you could have predicted my favorite, but if you thought Katana Junior, I think this is my favorite. And again, I want to be very clear about this. For those of you that skipped and just went to the end and got the conclusion, I'm going to go through them all right here. I'll put the specs up at the bottom here in just a second. But before I do that, I just want to say, like, I like the flexibility of the adjustments. I like a little bit more fine adjustment. I would say if I was designing this, or if they asked me for feedback, I would ask for a larger knob. I do like a little larger knob. That's nitpicky. It really is the only thing with this that I could find that I didn't love. If you like quick lockouts, you cannot go with this system. You cannot go with the other Promedia gear, and you need to stay away from the Leo Photo because those do not lock out quickly. So that's the biggest difference between this one and kind of the Wimberly designed ones. If you wanted to lock out quickly, definitely I would say in this group, the Wimberly was the one that I would have chosen. And if you want the ultra versatile, You just want, again, a travel, landscape, um, video, because it's got a fluid head field. Really do look at the Photo Pro, either the E9H or the E6H. Look at both of those. There's a little bit difference in price, but I really do like those systems, and they're very well made. I just don't think it's for a dedicated wildlife shooter. So that's my honest opinion on that. All right, let me put the summary at the bottom. There we go. So this gives you kind of a quick glance for those of you, again, who didn't sit through the whole thing. A quick glance of what the specs are for these. And I hope you enjoyed this. I've got one more video, so I'm not going to review any more gimbals. I'm done reviewing gimbals. I've been doing this for months. I did 15, I think, gimbals. What I am going to do is one show that talks about all of them, all 15 at once. It's going to be a summary, and is there a best of best? Now, I will tell you, spoiler alert, I'm leaning toward this one right here. The Photo Pro interests me because it's $200 cheaper. And I did that in the other review. So if you're not familiar with that brand, go check, I said Photo Pro, Leo Photo, make that clear. The Leo Photo is about $200 cheaper. So it's definitely something that you should look at, a very similar design. This one, again, made in the United States. The Zanelli, I don't think I mentioned it, made in Italy. The Photo Pro, made in China. So I've got a busy spring planned. We're going to do a few more product reviews. I've got another gimbal type device I'm going to look at. I am pretty gimbaled out, but there is one more product that I am going to look at as a gimbal alternative. So be on the lookout for some more product reviews. I've been taking the Z9 out quite a bit, so check out. I've got a lot of videos on the Z9 out, some of the focusing problems and some of the issues, why I love it, why I don't. So check that out as well. It's springtime here in the Northeast. It's starting to get really, really nice. So I hope you guys are out enjoying wildlife as much as I am. And I hope we can continue to find inspiration in wildlife together.